And so when I'm sitting in the right seat, I always tell them, make it happen, Cap'n. So that's what we're doing. Make it happen, Cap'n. It is Thursday night and time once again for another ADRAMADA, another Dave Rush Ask Me Anything digital alchemy. I guess we can make that go away. That was something I ran across today and just thought I'd recreate it. And then it looked like that. Hey, good after evening, morning, everyone, wherever in the world you may be. I am here, you are here, and that's what's important. So pleased to see you. Got a slow start? I can live with that, as I always can. I could do this to an empty room. I still get the same number of viewers by the end of the week. I've amused myself. And so every time I amuse myself, I'll provide my own laugh track. No, I am my own laugh track. We know that. Hey, well, it is Thursday. It is the first day of June. As they say, it seems to be busting out all over. And I am Dave Rush, your tech from Texas. This is ADRAMADA. And we're here because I love tech. I love researching it. I love playing with it. I love all kinds of it. Doesn't have to be computers. It's optics and it's thermodynamics and it's whatever you got. I'm into it mostly. And so this show is devoted to the dissemination of information and use of technology. And in particular, we're interested in how the advancement of technology impacts our daily and our long-term lives. And man, there's been a lot of good stuff on those ways. The last 3 to 6 months, what an explosion in artificial intelligence. I could devote 4 shows a week, 2 hours a day to AI news of the week. Not going to do that. That's a little overkill. We do try to vary things up just a little bit. Yeah, I know. Some changes to the set from last week. I was trying to do some kind of little tweak, but the tweaks this week weren't just for tweaks. I know everything looks like it's on an angle. I suppose I could tilt my camera. No, it's because everything is on an angle, and I'm not going to try and fix that right now because you know some tragedy will happen if we do that. Anyways, we range then across a wide variety of topics from computers and IT to security to energy and automation, AI, music and movies, electric cars and electric guitars, all points in between and beyond. And even though the show title says Digital Alchemy, there's great analog technology out there too. So it's my show. I'm not beholden to anybody. So I fear no topic. If we want to dive into social topics, religion, politics, COVID, whatever you got, I got lines too. But you know, I look like I haven't. I've plateaued. It's because I've plateaued. We'll get there. I did not mess with the audio video sync settings this week. It's been, as usual, an insanely busy week. And so I will probably be badly out of sync by the time the show ends, and I apologize for that. Don't want to do that? No, we'll come back. No, that's part of the greeting. So I don't know if I'm going to add this to all the shows, but I say to you, I welcome you with Eep, Op, Ork, Ah. And somebody knows what that means, and once they comment on it, I'll come back and talk about it more. Scott is here. Scott, I'm glad you're here, because I know there was something that I was doing today and built into the show that said Scott should know about this. All right, so let's see who here and what everybody has to say. Tellwit, of course, beats the show by 4 hours, a little earlier than your usual earliness. And then turns up again a half an hour before showtime. So I like this. Dave might make me pull that. No, you're the mod. I don't. If you decide it's okay by me. Patricia Grace, hello to one of my favorite nerds, and I'm pretty picky. You're right. I am very picky about my audience, and you are one of my favorite audience members. In fact, everybody here is one of my favorite audience members. And if a guy named Attila turned up, or a lady named Lucretia turned up, she too would be one of my favorite audience members. I love this toy. I'll get bored with it, but until I do. So I didn't realize this was the month that we celebrated the Noahic covenant. I didn't know there was one we did that. I was raised Catholic. We have a saint every day that we honor, but that one's news for me, so cool. Excuse me. An update to Power Toys is available. I did not see that in my handy dandy news feeds. Is there anything new, Tullowit, or is it just improved on what's there? Because there's some interesting Windows 11 news in the last 2 days. I keep a Windows 11 machine up and running in a virtual machine in my Linux daily driver. So I saw that news about some updates and some, not widgets, but some new component monitoring system. You know, we can monitor CPU and network interface card traffic and stuff like that. Well, there's some new, better, updated versions of those. And so I updated my Win 11 machine, and I haven't played with it yet. So Visual Z, nerds. I did something interesting, Nerd Patricia, today. As you know, I live and love to purchase or acquire wacky tech shirts. And for new shirts, my go-to is AliExpress. And I thought of a new search term today, and so I went and looked up nerd shirts, and I found a lot. So I'll be doing a little bit of shopping in the coming days and weeks. Reading massages. Wait, I don't have CompTIA OT Plus. Nobody has any. All the new things from CompTIA, the A Plus modules, their title is CompTIA A Plus _, and then the name of the module, networking or coding or whatever it is. So I have no underscore. I have no certifications. I have no CompTIA certifications. I've said this before, but not everybody knows it. People who will watch on the show later. So, Total Seminars, my employer, has a mobile CompTIA testing center. We take it on the road with us when we go do Leo training and things like that. And if you have been certified in CompTIA for the last 3 years, you can't proctor any of the tests. That's one of their rules. So I stopped getting certified some time back. Well, then they made it harder. I was able to do it after my certifications lapsed, but then they decided to add a new rule. If you have taught anybody in the test, you can't proctor the test. So it doesn't matter. I could go get certificates now because I can't proctor pretty much anything that I do anymore. We bring in our people from the company to proctor the test on the last day of classes. I'm there as technical support. I help set everything up. And what a task that can be. I have great war stories from that I will share with you someday. Sound is good. Thank you. Jason Helms, here as ever and always. Thank you also as ever and always for retweeting, reposting the LinkedIn announcements. Appreciate that. Hello, hope everyone is doing well. I am doing well. Fun stuff. I just ordered new keyboard. I've been a Logitech fanboy forever, but the keys are falling off when I type, and I've lost a few. Hope the new Corsair is a good one. I don't know if this is Corsair or not. This is Thermal Take, and I use my standard Microsoft guy here for day-to-day stuff. Hey, Joshua Hancock, also as ever and always, thank you for spreading the word, and Patricia too. Tell it, paging Scott, and there he is. He appears. I think there's a lot more people in the background here that never communicate, and so you never see their name, and they don't turn up in the live chat lists. But I know you're here, and I appreciate it. Bugville, okay. I was trying to work up something out of a .whack command or a hidden directory in Linux. Could be Nug. Nerdyshirts.com, no. AliExpress.com, nerd shirts, and also tech shirts. That brings up a nice list of goodies. So, does the Total Sim hire professional proctorologists? I read that before I got there. I decided to verbalize it, and the answer is obviously yes. All my CompTIA certs. That's the beginning of a country song if ever I heard. All my CompTIA certs except for my A+ was proctored online. Okay. I'm glad it's worked out for you. For most people, it does. However, I have this personal observation. I've been making notes on by Reddit posts of people who've had bad experiences doing online versus in person, and the complaint rate is about 10 times higher for online testing. Doesn't mean that the failures are 10 times higher necessarily, or 10% of online testing fails where 99% of in-person doesn't fail, but it's certainly for many people much more problematic to do onlines. I'm thinking about doing a cert here in the next 58 days. Why? Because the certificate that I bought secondhand expires in 58 days, and I bought it way cheaper than I can buy it on my company discount at the office. So I will do it in person. Way too many. You know what? Even if there weren't horror stories, I could not turn this into a testing environment that would be acceptable to CompTIA Pearson VUE. So I'll go to my handy dandy local one. Back when I was in my early pilot days, you have to take a test for all of your ratings are written, and they are given at Pearson VUE testing centers. So there's one down at the airport. And I picked this house when I moved into it because it's a 10-minute drive, at least it was then, to the airport. So now I haven't checked with them in years. They may not be open anymore. COVID killed a lot of folks out there. Ooh. Okay, so you got A+, Net+, Tech+, CISA, and Pen Test. Very nice, sir. Wow. Joshua, I did have one issue with Online Proctor where my computer wouldn't pass the nothing run in the background of Chrome Remote Desktop plugin, but I fixed it and did the test next day. Very good. Well, it's nice that you were able to reschedule it so quickly. Lots of people don't have that good fortune. All right, that gets us caught up there. Let's see what's going on in the notes. Seriously, Tullowit, I say eep, op, ork, and you say nothing? I'm left there hanging for you and a couple other people who are old enough. Scott wasn't into pop back when that was around and into pop culture, so he doesn't know what that means. You and I, heck, I say that every single day getting up, because I get that old man get up thing sometimes. Eep, up, ork, And I just told my son, my 23-year-old son, what that means this week. He always just assumed I was making troglodyte noises. No, it's got meaning. Oh, I missed it? Okay. I'm going back to look for it. Yeah, okay, there it is. Yep, you are exactly right. So, Epop Ork I'll let everybody in on the secret, is from an episode of the Jetsons where we had this sort of space Elvis Presley young type singer who stole, borrowed, misheard, whatever, Elroy's secret code language that he had with his friend. And I think the code is actually supposed to be something like meet me in the clubhouse or whatever, but our erstwhile Elvis type translated them into his own words. Eep, op, ork, that means I love you. And that's been banging through my head a lot lately. So today I thought I would just catch that 3 minutes of the video of the episode. And I watched it today. When I was looking it up, the Violent Femmes, which is a group that I happen to like a lot, did a cover of Eep, op, ork, and it's really good. So there we go. Tech news of the week. What's going on out there? A lot of this just derives from rabbit holes that I go down. I'm doing legitimate research and run across something. And this particular question kind of dawned on me. I've been looking for a big hard drive for a batch of them, 4 terabyte drives, 16 terabytes worth of drives. And as I was going down that rabbit hole, I saw somebody pushing large flash drives, and I wondered, what's the largest flash drive available? It's just a single terabyte, 1 terabyte. There's about 4 or 5 major manufacturers who do them, and it's interesting. The prices range, I'm looking at here in my notes, from $90 to almost $300 US. And I thought, well, what's the difference? Flash drives are flash drives. No, flash drives are not flash drives. The speed at which they operate is huge. Of course, they're all USB 3s, and many of them, they use the USB-C interface, but transfer rates on them, let's just stick to reading, which is always much faster than writing. Keep this thought in mind. A fast flash drive reads at about 550 megabytes per second. So you get what you pay for. If you buy these cheap ones, they're going to be very slow. So I'm looking at the SanDisk Ultra Dual Drive. It's got 2 kinds of USB connectors on it. Reads at 150 megabytes per second. Corsair's got one that reads at, where are you at? 440. Patriot has one. This is the one. Maybe there's another one. I didn't get... These things are sold out. You can't get pricing on them anywhere. But the Patriot Supersonic Rage Prime, they have Rage 2s and some other Rage models. The Rage Prime is their top-of-the-line model, USB 3.2 Gen 2. And so this thing cranks out, reads at 615, and writes at 550 megabytes per second. That is unheard of, and that's not their claim. That's been Crystal Disk Mark tested all over the place. There's one that I never heard of, Arcanite, reads at 400 megabytes, and the PNY Pro Elite V2, also 600 and 500, and that's $110. So there's some really fairly fast flash media out there that's big and not horribly expensive. And a lot of these are on sale right now. As I was doing this research, I think it was Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, when we got back from the activities of the day, I saw all of these things, almost all of them, on sale, and I'm wondering if that's indicative that there's a new generation coming out of bigger or faster stuff. So. Interesting project here. I'll post this in the chat feed. It needs a title. What do we got here? Okay, RPi to run car in cold weather. All right, so this is a Raspberry Pi project. Guy has a car that you can use the remote for to remote start it. Now mine, I have the same thing, and if I remote start it, maybe I want it to get warm when it's cold out there in advance, it will run for 10 minutes, and then it turns itself off. And it's a really interesting thing that's got nice security. If I go out to it to get in it within the 10 minutes, the doors are locked. That's part of the process. And if I unlock them with the remote, it turns it off. So it's an anti-theft thing. Anyways, so this guy, he took a Raspberry Pi and an Arduino. And I looked at his setup and realized this could be done without the Arduino, but he took the Raspberry Pi and hooked it up to sensors to watch the temperature outside. The goal being when the temperature gets to a certain cold value that he wants to turn his car on and run it for, I don't know, it doesn't say if it ran for 10 minutes like mine or if it stays on or what the story is. So rather than get into the guts and the wiring of his car, he took an Arduino and set it up to receive a signal from the Raspberry Pi, and it in turn is hooked up to a solenoid plunger. And he has his remote mounted underneath the solenoid plunger. And so when it gets the signal, you can't just press auto start one time and it auto starts. You have to press this button first, and then press this button twice, and then this button press and hold. So he built all that pattern into the Arduino. And so the Raspberry Pi detects cold weather. It sends a signal to the Arduino. The Arduino punches up the solenoid, and it remote starts his car. I thought that was a really interesting thing. I think there's questions that didn't get answered in my mind for that project. And I know that I could do it all with one box or another, an Arduino or an RPi or whatever. But let's do one more weird trivia. Back in the 70s, this is unrelated to anything. This is just fun trivia that I ran across. Back in the 70s, the longest word in the English language was the answer to a trivia question. And everybody knew the answer. And it's one of the reasons that it is the answer is because it was I think it was a winning question in the National Spelling Bee. The word was anti, or anti if you prefer, anti-disestablishmentarianism. At the time, the largest word in English. It's not a hard word to spell. If you say it slowly, anti-disestablishmentarianism, you'll get it right if you can read a little bit and speak a little bit of English. That, of course, has gone by the wayside. As technology advances and as medicine advances, newer, bigger words. Oh, by the way, this is the one fun part of trivia that I find really fascinating about that. Everybody in America knew that the longest word in the English language is anti-disestablishmentarianism. Almost nobody knew what it meant. Scott will know, medieval historian that he is. And I'm saying that without facetiousness. He really is. But unless you are English lit involved or some other discipline, some faith religions and faith disciplines, you wouldn't know what it is. And I'm not going to explain it to you. Look it up. But today, I thought, what is the biggest word today? Again, it's easy to spell if you sound it out, but it's one big long word. I didn't count the letters in this thing. It's pronounced, I broke it up into subwords, pneumono ultra microscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. Push that all together, one big word. Presently, the longest word in the English language. And when I looked it up, it explained what it was. I didn't bother to write it down, and I don't care. I just thought that's a nice thing. By the way, that pales in size to some words of our international cohorts. They've got some monster words in the land of half my heritage over in Germany. They have words that aren't really words; they're books. I got to tell you something important. This was something that I ran across 2 weeks ago. Thought it was interesting. Posted it to some places of people who would share my interest. And then I let the thought go. I didn't put notes in it because I think there's a place for it in future products from my employer. And then I was thinking about it today. I thought, wait a minute, that's a perfect discussion. So I have to, I guess, kind of admit something here. I have been lying for years. And I apologize. Did you ever get one of those things where you were told something and you believed it? There was no reason not to believe it. It was a fact. Maybe it was... I have learned when I think about anything that my father ever said that was interesting, not to repeat it here in my adulthood, in my older adulthood, before I actually go look it up, because there are some things that he got in his head that were so far wrong. It's unbelievable. Well, this is one of those things that seems to make sense. It's one of those things, if you hear it, you look out on the landscape of the world and say, yeah, that's got to be true. And so you repeat it. Certainly I have for decades. And then I ran across an ad during one of my research runs and said, oh my gosh. So here's my notes in order now. It's easy to accept some things as factual and then to perpetuate those facts. And we learn the fact isn't quite so factual. So the fact that we have all been told, I've been telling you this Mike tells you this. We just believe it. I haven't even shared this with Mike yet. We tell everybody that we are out of IPv4 addresses. Turns out maybe that's not quite a lie, but it is certainly not a complete truth. What it means is that all of the IPv4 addresses have been handed out to ISPs. Let's just call it to ISPs in large blocks and small blocks. So there's none available from ARIN, the people who give out IP addresses. They probably got some secret stash, a couple of hidden blocks, but you got to know somebody. Well, it turns out that this is a free thing, right? If you're an ISP, you started up, hey, I expect to have 500 customers. I need a block of 512 IPv4 addresses. Well, you ain't getting them from ARIN. So what does that mean? You can't be an ISP? No. You can still be an ISP if you are 100% IPv6, but we need to be IPv4. Lots of our customers are only IPv4. So here's what happens. ISPs who got more IP addresses for free than they needed sell them or lease them to brokers. Brokers own and lease massive quantities of blocks of IPv4 addresses. And they get, these ISPs are the only ones, that's not true. They're the first ones who make money off it because they got this free resource from ARIN, ARIN, and they are selling or leasing to the brokers. The brokers then sell or lease at a profit. That kills me. That kills me. I find it to be immoral, unethical, fattening. They take these free resources that exist ostensibly for the good of all mankind, and they pervert their intended purpose for their own profit. I know they're not the only ones who do this, but that one just struck a nerve with me. I am a full-blown capitalist, hardcore capitalist. But capitalist doesn't mean greedy money grubbers. It means that we want to earn money using fair trade practices, codes of ethics, and so forth. Capitalism isn't a one-way street, and these folks, in my mind, are not capitalists. And I just took a sampling of some of the names of just look for IPv4 brokers. There are no IPv6 brokers because all the IPv6s, at least presently, are still plenty, have lots of availability, and they're all global, they're all public, if you want to call it that. But so all of these brokers, they're pushing IPv4 addresses. Companies and brokerages with names like IP Trading, Hilco Stream Bank, I love that name, IPv4 Marketing Group, IPv4 Global, IPv4 Mall, and lots of others. So I certainly don't agree with the business practice, but if for whatever reason, you don't have to be an ISP, big company, and I want a bunch of public IPv4 addresses, you can get them by lease or by sale from these brokers. And similarly, if you have blocks of IP4 addresses that you don't need, you can sell them to or through them. So, something, huh? All right, let's see what's going on back in news and posts. We'll do personal news, then we'll get on today's topish. Sorry, I'm scrolling back up. I'd super scrolled while we did this, and I'm just catching dribs and drabs of people's posts. Okay, got it. I saw your post. Liked watching the Jacksons. That's why I love you. That's why eep op ork It's not filtering. It's quick reading. I do miss over that. Hope the 1 terabyte flash drives they're not all 3.2. There's a lot of 3.1s. And there's 3.2 Gen 1s and 3.2 Gen 2s. So again, you get what you pay for. You can do a whole show just on deciphering USB names while they're doing. Boy, you're not wrong about that. SD card ratings, right? Those are getting. They've got some new life in the last year. They got the new V ratings on them. I'll learn the hard way. I saw a computer dusting short. Okay, so I'll fess up a little bit about that. That is the beginning of a failed experiment, and I got together with Michael Smyer today to figure out what the failure is. We have an idea, and I will work on it again this weekend. So I have a long version of that. There's a video that's on the Total SEM YouTube channel of me dusting out a computer. And YouTube has a Shorts channel now, and we wanted to do a really cool thing with the Shorts channel and our Discord server over in the company. So I have to get a functioning Shorts channel. You would think that's easy. It ain't. So there are some rules about the videos that you have to post. They have to be between 15 and 60 seconds. So my full-blown version of that video, by the way, you can find that here on my personal site. You'll see it if you go up one level from here, and you'll find my dusting a computer. So I made a 1-minute version of that. It's cut, it's badly edited, and it's going to go away. It's just there for beta testing. So it's 59 seconds. I met the rules on that. You have to put certain keywords in the description, hashtag shorts, and optionally in the title. And then it's supposed to create a Shorts channel for you and automatically put it in there. And it didn't do it right away. And it's well, a lot of things I do with YouTube are delayed, and they'll take up to a day. So I waited a day. Nothing happened. The following day, I went to check it out. The video had disappeared. And I posted today on a company Instagram, hey, if anybody removed that, I know it wasn't appropriate for where I posted it, but it needed to be there for some reason. And whoever deleted it, please talk to me and let's find out why and deal with that. And then I went back and looked, and there it was again. So I don't know if it came back mysteriously, or if somebody put it back and didn't fess up or whatever. But still, nothing has happened on Shorts. And it was a wide shot. It was a sideways camera shot. And apparently Michael Smyer believes that it only works with vertical camera video. So I'm going to shoot something new this weekend, just some junky little testing, and see if we can create a Shorts channel. And if it does, then we have some really, really cool things in mind for it. It's going to be awesome, and I will want you all to participate. Hard way is best way. Yeah, I know what you meant there. Abu Bakr Al-Hajj, my favorite name, my favorite person in your neck of the woods. Okay. Tulwood posted the link to it. You're an anti-disestablishmentarian, huh? There will be a Church of England if you have any say so about it. There you go. That's a hint to get into it. Anarcho-capitalist. I think I probably fit kind of there. I do like a little regulation now and again. Wait. You mean bubblegum will not take 7 years to digest? Or if you eat a watermelon, a watermelon will grow in you? Yeah, robber barons, most definitely. Corporations are jerks. Capitalists try to make profit without being greedy. Oh, okay. I'll certainly agree to the second. Some corporations are okay. Bites tongue, promise not to. You can argue politics on this one, Scott, all day. Come online with me. Share my Zoom session. I'm not Zooming now, but I would Zoom for you. And we'll talk politics. We'll just devote one show to Dave and Scott get nasty with each other. We got nasty at some time a few years ago in the hallways of the office and decided kind of unofficially to stop talking politics together. And we love each other still. And we trickle around the edges of politics. Scott Jernigan, you and Dave should do a show on the side like the old Hannity and Combs. Oh, man, I remember that show. That was great. Yeah, so we'll get this Shorts thing figured out. Scott, so with Tulwood on this. Podcast. Dave and Scott. No video. Just you and I rapping for an hour a night once a week. I would Zoom with you. What's the song that you'll come up with it? Hey, let's start a project. So I have this index. Every time I run across what I think would be an interesting topic for the show, I put it in the index. I put a little bit of research in there. And then when it comes time to pick a show, I run through that index and said, oh, hey, cool. I like this idea. I don't know about you. If I have to check BIOS, maybe I've been on a vendor support site, and hey, they have a BIOS that was released in the last 2 or 3 months. I know I haven't updated my BIOSes in the last 2 or 3 months. Let me go check the support sites of my computers and see how new their BIOSes are. And then I got to find out how old my BIOS is and add that to the calculus of, do I want to update my BIOS? Just because there's a new one out there is not a good reason to update a BIOS. I'll get into that later. And so I stopped what I was doing. I said, you know what? I should go and check and see the age of my BIOS and my daily drivers right now, and then I'll go find out how to do this. And the usual way to go check the age of your BIOS or the version of your BIOS is to reboot your computer. I was in the middle of something. Well, you're going to have to stop. And then when it's booting up, bang on the appropriate F2 key or delete key or whatever key is right for your computer. Go into the CMOS setup programming and look at the info tag that's got BIOS date and version information. Well, this thing that I found a couple of months ago and added to my index was you don't have to quit Linux to do that. You can just stay in Linux and it will read your BIOS rev information. Hey, I said, that's a good topic, but it's quick. It's a one-shot command. We run the command, we get all the information we need, and we're all done. How do I turn that into a show? And then I thunk about it for a couple seconds, said, wait a minute. If you can do that in Linux, you can probably do it in Windows. And it took about a minute and a half of research with a holy Hannah. Now I got a show. How to check BIOS in Windows, how to check BIOS in Linux. So we are going to talk about today the Linux DMI decode command and the Windows WMIC BIOS commands. 2 words, but they work together as a single command, and then there's some switches that go after that. So I want to spend just a minute or two, where are we at here? It's 37. Yeah, I'll spend about 3 or 4 minutes talking about BIOS and firmware. So what is it? Well, it stands for Basic Input Output Services or Basic Input Output System. Both definitions are valid. And it means there is some kind of code that's built into a device. Maybe that device is a computer. Maybe that device is a thermostat. Maybe that device is a toaster oven. Whatever. There is something that when you hit the power switch, if there's any kind of intelligence to that box, there's a program in there. And that program lives in a chip. And that chip is hard to change its contents. It can be changed. It's usually flash ROM. But if you lose power, we're not going to lose the contents. It's not particularly large. These tends to be small programs, and they're just enough to get things up and running. Because they are not on erasable media like micro SD cards or flash drives or hard drives or even SSDs, they exist in chips that require a massive effort, a special program to change them. We call them firmware. We call the programs in there firmware. So firmware essentially refers to software embedded in a piece of hardware. There's 3 types of firmware. There's low-level firmware, cannot be modified or altered. It's an integral part of the hardware elements. There's high-level firmware, higher levels of instruction complexity than lower level, makes them closer to the realm of software than hardware, used in conjunction with flash memory chips and therefore upgradable. And then there's subsystems, parts of a more extensive system which can work independently. You don't have to know these definitions for anything. I just want you to run into the terms. Did I have a good thing here? Yeah, too deep. So we know the firmware in a personal computer. We call it the BIOS. BIOS is being has been upgraded. We call it UFI now. UFI is a bigger, smarter, stronger version of BIOS. When it wakes up your computer, it wakes up in a much more powerful mode. And I have news about that I didn't cover today. Let's mention it real quick. Intel has pre-announced that upcoming CPUs will no longer boot up in 8 or 16-bit mode. They will boot up from now on in 32 and 64-bit modes. That mandates no more BIOS. You got to use UFI to provide code for them in 32-bit or 64-bit format to get the computer booted up and tested and all of that good stuff. Why is firmware good? What are the benefits of firmware? Well, it's essential for home appliances, for network hardware, right? I don't want to put a micro SD card or a flash drive in my router to teach it how to do anything. I want to build it into the system. So when I plug it in, routers don't even have on-off switches. I plug it in, it boots up, it runs the code. So it's quick, it's easy. It's hard to change, but it is changeable when patches and things like that do come out. So cool. It's a cost saver. With firmware upgrades, we don't have to bear the cost of buying new products, right? Before BIOS built into devices, a device would age out and it didn't have the capability to get new instructions and new codes and new features, not new hardware features, of course, but if it's got the hardware in there and it can do new things with those hardware, then firmware is available to do that. It boosts performance. That's kind of thin. I didn't love that answer. Improve features and security. I think that's the biggest one. So let's say, I didn't come up with an example for these. Here's the easy one, security, right? So there is a vulnerability in the way the interface of a router is implemented. With firmware, we can take care of that. We can patch that vulnerability. We can add features. Oh, okay, here's a likely feature. All of the chipsets of a USB controller support the top speed that chip was designed to. They also may be able to be backward compatible. That's something that you have to tell the firmware, do be backward compatible or don't. So if I've got a USB 3.2 Gen 2, I can say, hey, by the way, if anybody plugs in and they're USB 2 Gen 1, 3.2 Gen 1, go ahead and work with it. Or the other way around. If they're not 3.2 Gen 2, reject anything that plugs in. Your smart TVs have additional features. There might be additional channels. Remember, your smart TV is getting information off of the internet. So we add channels by providing more URLs and sites, streaming sites. So that's done by updating firmware. Let's see. I got a whole bunch of stuff on security, best practices. I'm going to let it go. I want to get into the project here. I will post this up on ADRAMADA.com, and you can read all this stuff. It's fun. It's interesting, but let's get into the project. So, to my mind, the benefit of checking out your BIOS rev information within an operating system is the obvious one. I don't have to shut down my computer and reboot it. In fact, you have to do that twice, right? You got to shut it down, boot it up, get into the BIOS menu. Okay, I got my information. Now I have to shut it down again, boot it up again, and let it get past the BIOS menu and boot up the operating system. Yuck. So let me make sure that this thing is up and running. It looks like it. Yeah. Sometimes if you leave PuTTY run too long and it doesn't have input, it shuts down. So let's put PuTTY up here. All right, this is my daily driver, my NUC 10 i7 FNH. Come here, you. So the command to check out your BIOS in Linux, it's built into Linux. It's another great thing about this. We don't have to load or install any special packages. Is called DMID code. And the first thing I want to do is stop it. Man, I am making a pig's breakfast out of all my documents here. Stand by. DMID decode. I know you're not seeing anything at standby. Okay, there we go. So to make sure that it's installed and running in my computer, I'm going to type in which DMI decode. And okay, I get one. You may have multiple copies of any given program in a Linux box. By running which and the name of the program, it'll tell you which one is going to run when you type it in. It's the first one that's encountered in what's called a path list. So there's a program called DMI decode, which is in whack user, whack sbin. Cool, that's the one that I'm going to run. So let's go ahead and run it. DMI decode. And it says permission denied. Well, there's a reason. DMI decode has to be run with sudo. So I could be in the su environment, or I can say sudo DMI decode. And it says, hey, you're running sudo, prove it. Not every Linux system will do that, but mine's set up to do it that way. So I type in my handy dandy super secret password, and look at all the stuff that came up. So I'm digging. There is tons of information available to DMI decode. And the stuff that I want is right here, right after I ran the command. BIOS information. It's an Intel BIOS. This machine is an Intel machine. The date is 2023. I just did this a week ago. And the firmware, that was the date that it was installed. The firmware is 2.8. I'm sorry, it's all true. It's all the same. Firmware is dated February 8th of 2023. So now that I know that version, by the way, when I ran this on this particular box the first time, it had a 2020 BIOS. And when I ran it on its neighbor, same make and model, but a different CPU, it was 2021. So it didn't take much in the determination process to say, I need that. I need a newer one. So that's it. That's everything that you need to care about in your Linux box to check out there's a lot more information there, and when we could dive into DMI decode, but how about this? Sudo, I didn't try this, I'm going to take a whack at it. DMI decode. And we'll run that through grep and BIOS. There were lots of lines that had the word BIOS in it, but you may recall when we did this a second ago, there was BIOS information, and then the date and version information was underneath there and didn't have the word BIOS on the line. All right, let's unshare that. Go back to here, webcam. All right, we're halfway through the topics and tasks. The next task is a little more involved. I do want to mention here, we're in good shape on time, that the BIOS update process is not the same BIOS process that it used to be. Scary. Unfortunately, that still exists. It may be, but there's about 4 other potential methods that you can do, and different BIOS technologies now on motherboards. The coolest, awesomest one is motherboards that have 2 BIOSes in them. So, okay, I'll get that at 740. Thank you, Scott. If you've got 2 BIOS chips in your computer, you can update one set of them and then power down your computer and flip the BIOS switch to that set, power up, and that's the BIOS that you'll use. And if it's a good BIOS, then you keep it, and now you use your other ones as backup or to stage the next one. And if it's a bad BIOS, if it bricked or something like that happened, you power down, you return to the other set of BIOS chips, and the world's a happy place. These machines, as new as they are, they're very new, use the old method where you've got to download a BIOS file, put it in a flash drive, boot up, go into the flash update memory or a program, hit the go button, and then step away. Because if you interrupt the process at all, in this, it's same kind of here as it was 20 years ago updating BIOSes, you will brick the machine. And maybe it's recoverable. If they've got socketable ROM, you can order a new set of BIOS chips from Intel and wait for them to come in and socket them up. But bleh, what a pain. All right, let's talk about doing the same kind of information check in Windows. Here again, we have another really nice thing, a program that will do this for us without having to download any special programs, and we're going to run it from the command line, and you don't have to run the command line in admin mode. There is no sudo type operation necessary here. So I'm going to show you, let's see, you, shrink, go away. Where is, oh heck, I can get it this way. Okay, there's my command line. Built into Windows is a monitoring system whose name is, it's the Windows Management Instrumentation System, WMI. And in order to access that system, we have a command called WMIC, the Windows Management Instrumentation Command Line, or the WMIC command. If I just type WMIC, I find myself in the WMIC environment. I don't want to be there. I want to use it with switches. So they have keywords. We've done this in some other episodes. So I'm going to use a keyword here after this one, BIOS, WMIC BIOS. And what that does for me is two things. First of all, it runs every possible switch that's supported after the word BIOS, and it shows them to you here in this very ugly format. If I could widen this screen out enough, it would make a little more sense. It'd be a nice line-by-line presentation, but not stunningly useful in this particular format. If I output this to a file, that's a pretty useful thing. I could do something like this. Send this to filename.txt. And it would, but I'm not going to do that right now. So what I want you to notice here is a couple of them. We see this line here, SM BIOS version. We see SM BIOS major version, SM BIOS minor version, SM BIOS present. I'm not going to get into all the definitions of that. Sometimes when you run these things, it generates a word or textual response. Some features only generate a numeric response. So I want to show you one, the biggie that this whole presentation kind of boils down to. And the way this all works is we're going to say WMIC BIOS get, and then one of the key terms, the switches, in here. So I want to show you a couple, like SM BIOS version. And says, bad query, why SM BIOS version. Okay, they're not all supported by every computer. I can live with that. How about description? There we go. So I got a description, and this is of the BIOS, so I get some of the critical information that I want. In fact, all of it here. I've got a BIOS date. This is my laptop, and you can see it's got an ancient BIOS in there, 2014. That's the last time they made an update for this computer. So I've been running this box for at least 6 years now. And the BIOS version is April 06 of 05, or I'm sorry, 04, 06, 05. That's not a date. So there's useful. So that was straight version. There's also a BIOS version. Oh, that was description. As opposed to SM BIOS version. A little more information. I get some serial number information about my computer. Same date, same version information. The date that it was installed. So it was installed on the day that it was new. I got that the same day. I remember that. But there's what you need. That's the whole point of it. And you can play around with WMIC BIOS and just check out all of the different get switches in here. Software element state. I have no idea what that does. Let's do status. I see status as a keyword in there. Never do something you haven't practiced. The status is okay. Every time we've done a lab that includes a get status, it's always been okay. So, fine. All right, let's come back to me. So there's a lot going on in the BIOS world, and I want to talk to you just briefly for about a minute about one more thing. Updating your BIOS. I have determined that my BIOS is out of date. I've determined that there's a good, newer one that I want. How do I get that in there? Well, there's all kinds of ways. And the question came to my mind, is there a generic way? Is there a generic BIOS updater in Windows? Is there a generic BIOS updater in Linux? And the answer in Windows is no. That one's real clear. However, many manufacturers, including the nice folks at Dell, they have a Windows-based BIOS updater program. And it's so cool. It will go out, you run it, it looks at your BIOS, it goes out to the Dell site, checks for your make and model, checks for a newer BIOS, finds it if there's a new one, and asks you, hey, do you want me to update your BIOS here? Why, yes, I do. Bing. And you walk away and come back a few minutes later and you reboot your machine if it doesn't auto reboot it, and it's all done. So there are other vendors who also do a Windows-based BIOS updater program. There is an effort to have a generic BIOS updater in the Linux environment. It's called FW Update, firmware update. Is it update or upgrade? FW up. UPD. It's update, but it's not the whole word. And it is an effort to create a generic BIOS updater. I've done some looking around, people who've used it. It mostly works, but when it doesn't, hope you got a set of backup chips. So I would not use it. I want to stick with my built-in CMOS program or my manufacturer's program. All right, there's a question that popped up here that I have been informed of. Dave, this is from Jason. Can you explain what all the CMOS battery controls nowadays have changed much in the last few years? Okay, so I saw a discussion on the Discord server that started down this road, and I was shocked, and I started the research on it, and I haven't found anything that substantiated some of the claims that were made on there. So I'll share that with everybody here. Some people are saying that the battery is built into the South Bridge. No, that's not possible. It's not possible. Bottom line, you cannot build a battery into the South Bridge because the South Bridge is an integrated circuit chip, and when that battery dies, and it will die, all batteries die with lithium, nickel metal hydrides, NiCads back in the day, they got to be replaced. There comes a point when they simply will not hold a charge. So I don't have the answer for you, Jason. I didn't go down the rabbit hole to look for anything beyond that. That was just the one I was looking for to confirm or refute, and I utterly and absolutely refuted. Somebody can bring something to me, and I'll be happy to be wrong. There were some other people who made some claims about they're here, they're there. I went and looked up some of the newest notebooks and laptops for their batteries, and they're normal CR2032s. There's some CR2016s and some of the newer stuff, 3 volts, less life, but I am not clear that there is anything stunningly new in how this works in PCs. But I'll dig further into that, Jason. I'll take that as a fun research question. Let's put that right here. Control C. Down there. Control V. Something happened. Okay. What else here? Let's look at the last of the posts. Oh, there was lots. I'm going through them all. I'm not going to shut off early until we see all of these. I'll stop the world and meld with you. I don't think that was it. Not the one I was thinking of. I would die for you. That was it. It was Prince. I don't recall when the actual challenge happened, Scott, but it happened briefly. Who's zooming who? That's I can do the little Pointer Sisters probably zoom in my head there. Music trivia. I have a gigabyte computer. Aurus. My BIOS is probably compromised. That's probably old. It's like modern English for the brain. Hey, sorry, Dave. Got a question. Couldn't find an answer. Okay. Let's see if I know the answer now, and if not, I'll get it to you. Either on Discord or here. I'm scrolling down looking for it. If you posted it, cool. I'll find it. If you haven't, go ahead and post it now. I'll get it before we're done here. So music trivia. Aretha, best known for R-E-S-P-C-T. Yeah. Oh, Otis. Yeah. Yeah, I knew Otis wrote that. And of course, almost everything, a lot of stuff that Aretha did came from some of the great soul writers. I've learned that from my pastor. He's a sermon illustrated a couple of years ago. Okay, cool. Dave, can you explain what... Okay, I did that one. Yeah, cool and pointless trivia. Otis sings it with some serious soul. So many people cover that tune, don't they? Going there right after the show. Nice. Don't forget to go get E-Pop Work by Violent Femmes. Okay, there's your question. My public IPv6 interface ID changed constantly. This is the last 64-bit, but the first 64-bit coming from ISP is fixed and not constantly changing. How can I make the last 64-bit fixed? It's going to be slightly different whether you're doing it on Windows or Linux. I don't have the process in mind. The question that I have for you before we fix it and make it fixed is why? The reason that it changes is to help you become less trackable online. It is a security measure. But I will take that as a question, and next time we get together, I will have the answer for that, how to do it in both Linux and in Windows. And if anybody else has any thoughts on it, I'm not a one-man band here. You guys are all great at these kinds of things. Crank out some Otis. Does everybody know that Sitting on the Dock of the Bay was released posthumously? He recorded it. He moved out to California. He recorded it out of his literal experiences. And then he passed away before the album was released. And it was his greatest hit. Poor guy didn't get to celebrate it. Yes. Grep for the Sems. Yeah, that would work. That would work. Yeah, colons. I'm super scrolling. Hang on here. There we go. Back in the day, says Tullowit, before Flash BIOS, you could swap out the bug-looking chip to upgrade the BIOS. And you can still do that. You can still get 8-pin DIP BIOSes for a lot of different computers. So, yep, still available. And that's the saver. Right? If you brick your system because you mangled the BIOS, order them. And they're available from the manufacturer. They're also available from third-party CMOS providers. I don't know about the safety or integrity of those things. They may come with malware, but they are available. And they charge more, but they get them to you a heck of a lot quicker. 80s called back, said they wanted their interface back. Probably is made for an e-column back in the day. Alex Cunningham, new face. If it's broke, don't fix it. So there is some validity to that. I needed to update the BIOSes in my Linux machines because of a feature that wasn't working in OBS Studio. It now works. So for me, that was worth it. Xerxes is on the phone. Good to see you, Xerxes. And by the way, all the code in your phone, that's a BIOS. And it's got all three types in there. My understanding is that CMOS only keeps time now since BIOS settings are saved in some sort of flash on board. again, that was something that I saw posted on Discord, and I will look into it. My understanding of it, limited and incorrect as it probably is that there is still a BIOS, a CMOS BIOS chip, and that chip is built into the Southbridge chip. So it's not a dedicated standalone chip anymore, but it's still in there. It's still flash. And so I think we're probably saying the same thing, just from different points of view. Tulwit, and you may not have caught this, but you made a great pun with Die on That Hill. Die, right? Chip dies. Xerxes heard it too. You probably heard it from Tulwit posting it on Discord. Hey, all right, well, we've come to the end of our time. We've come to the end of our questions. Another ADRAMADA in the can. As always, I hope you've had as good a time as I have. We will do this again in a week or so. I have communicated with Mike this very day and yesterday, and he says he's going to do the AMA on Monday and his Net Plus study hall on Tuesday. He committed enough that I made banners and event announcements for both of them. So it's time to wind things up. Oh man, I hope. Okay, there it is. And let's do that. Okay. So as ever and always, I wish you a great rest of the week and upcoming weekend. Take care of each other. Take serious steps to stay healthy. And if at all are possible, please call or visit your parents. Never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resources we have are still you and I. And with that, good night. See you on ADRAMADA next Thursday, the AMA next week, and study hall. And remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. Eep, op, or ah.